Hi, everyone. This is Karen Disbrow. I'm your in-person hostess for this evening. We have Jim Durbin tonight. He's been working on the Big Sand Mound Preserve in Muscatine County, and he's spoken to us before on several different topics. And he's a past president of the Cedar Rapids Audubon Society, and he's currently the membership chair and the treasurer. But his love of the last few years, 10 years maybe or more, has been
98.
Since 98. Okay.
Insects.
The insects. And I've been out with him when he's done his, what do you call it? Night misting or
night lighting.
Night lighting. It's fascinating. So I'm sure we're going to have a great presentation, and this will be recorded. So please welcome Jim Durbin.
Okay. Just in reference to the night lighting, I think it's July 24th. It's a Friday. Kent Park is going to have their moth night, and I'll be there black lighting this year, assuming we don't get rain that night. Anyway, I'm going to talk about Big Sand Mound tonight. I started going there, I think it was in 92 with Jeff Nicola. He was a graduate student at Cedar Rapids, and he was taking us out of the Cedar Rapids Audubon people out on some field trips. And one of them ended up being Big Sand Mound. And at the time, you had to get special permission to get in, and they had to do background checks and all that, except for certain people could bring some groups in. And that's got a little better over the years, so we're a little easier to get in now. They're going to have their public field day this year on June 13th. It's a Saturday. So all the public's invited to that. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the insects and some of the other work we've been doing there, along with there's some other people doing some herp or turtles and snake studies. I'm more concentrated on the insects and plants. We're trying to document as many species as we can at Big Sand Mound. So it's going rather well. We're finding a lot of unique species there. This particular one that's on the screen here now it's called a flathorn ground beetle, and we've only documented at Big Sand Mound currently. We find a lot of them in their bucket traps that they use for catching the turtles in that. This is a Prionis cunitus. At one time, we had only found it at Big Sand Mound. Since then, they've renamed all the Prionis species. Well, at least this one used to be labeled as another species, and they separated it out to the cunitus. And at one time, we only found them at Big Sand Mound, but now we're finding them at other places around Iowa. So it's such a unique habitat down there that there's just a lot of things that are only found there. The Big Sand Mound is located south of Muscatine. It's about 510 acres. It's owned by Mid-American Energy and Bayer. I think Mid-America first started it in 76, and then Bayer added more onto it later, and it's jointly owned now. It's kind of unique, and it's in two different counties. It's in Muscatine and Louisa County. And I think the county line is kind of split between the Bayer and the Mid-American property. It's kind of right on the county line there. So I did some walks on the public days 3 or 4 times, and then Don Becker is doing a lot of turtle and snake work there now, so I'd go down with him some. And then we started doing night sessions in 2024. As part of that, we're trying to work on insect and plant associations. What plants do what insects use and that. So there's a lot of data gathering going on in the off season to find what plants are at what sites and then find what plants the insects use and try to correlate between the two so that if you have the plant there, hopefully you'll find the insect. And if you have the insect, the plant you there kind of thing. But it's not always true, but it does a lot of times work out that way. We documented 3,295 species at Big Sand Mound so far. That's birds, plants, insects, and some of the other orders that we found a few things in, like millipedes and that. So it's gone real well. And I got added to the advisory board officially at the October meeting last year. This is another interesting it's in the Gelsidae family. It's an undescribed moth. When I found it, it took me a while to actually figure out what it was. There's only about 10 records in the US that I could find. So it's about 1/4 inch long, so it's pretty small. But it's always fun to find the little teeny things, but you almost have to photograph them and then blow the picture up to really see what they look like. And some of the patterns on the little guys are really, really cool. So in 2025, we did some field days and night lighting sessions, May through October. And we did them in they have the preserve divided into burn units. And so we did our night lighting in burn unit C1, C2, and C7. And actually there's another one, F1, that's right by where you come into the preserve. We also had some stuff there. Again, we're trying to document anything we see. And a lot of the insects, unfortunately, we can only get them down to a genus level and sometimes even a family, because you have to actually dissect some of them to get them down to the species level. And I'm not into that. That's too fine a detail. So if you can't get it from a photo or whatever, I'm probably not going to go any further. But I use Bug Guide and Moth Photographers Group are my two primary sources of information on IDs. To at least cross-check identifications. If I find an ID for it, then I check those two sites. And I've started using iNaturalist for some because they have a few odd ones on there that aren't on Bug Guide. So those are the three main ones I use for verifying the identifications I make. Just to give you an idea, this is started in January, and this May I ran a report a couple days ago, and these are the difference in the numbers. We've added quite a few species already this year in the birds and whatever. And thanks to Mark Brown, he added a prairie warbler in April when we had one of our field days. So that was kind of neat. Those are always fun to see, even if it was, for this case, a new species for the site. And you can also see that we're up to 662 species of plants that have been documented on the site. This particular robber fly, up until we found it at Big Sand Mound, had only been found out at, I think it was the Five Ridge Prairie out in Luss Hills. And we're finding several of the species that we're finding at Big Sand Mound are documented out in the Luss Hills. So it's kind of some of the similar soil that's along the rivers. Big Sand Mound's on the Mississippi, the Loess Hills are on the Missouri. So they're similar kind of habitats. So it's interesting that we're finding some of these things only in the two sides of Iowa along the rivers in this particular kind of environment. This is another beetle that we found there. It comes out in June when the cactus starts blooming, and then it seems to disappear when the cactus blooms turn to fruit. We're not sure that there's any correlation between the two, but it just happens to be that way. So it's part of our studying to see if the cactus or some kind of a hosting plant or something, but they prefer yarrow for a nectaring source. So we find a lot of them on the yarrow plants when we're out walking around looking for them. You can kind of see a breakdown. There's 2,335 species of insects. We've got 606 species of moths, 59 butterflies, 40 species of dragonflies, 67 of grasshoppers. We've got 444 flies, Diptera. We've got 344 Hemiptera, or the true bugs, which includes stink bugs, the leaf hoppers, those kind of things, spittle bugs, 401 species of beetles, and 284 species of bees and wasps at the site. This is a Southern Plains bumblebee. In 2022, it was positioned to be added to the endangered species list, which I don't think that's changed. They're still waiting to see if it gets put on the list, but it's found in maybe a half a dozen places around Iowa, so they're not real common. We have like 700 species that we've only documented at Big Sand Mound. There's 771 that we've only got down to family or genus level. And I showed you the one undescribed species. We have 24 special concern, 8 threatened, and 11 endangered species at the site. So it's pretty prime habitat for a lot of different species. And these include plants, birds, insects, whatever. So it's a pretty across the board list of stuff that we found there that's on, we're concerned about how they're doing. This is kind of it used to be the regal fritillary that they were looking for at the site, which they found, but never very many. But I think in 2018, the Olympia marble was sighted there, but we didn't really, the turtle guys didn't, it was a butterfly. They didn't care. So it got mentioned to an insect person. They go, "You got to be kidding." Okay. So then we started looking for it. And last year we found, I went down on the 24th of April and found 12. And then I think Mark Brown and Chris Edwards and Mark Madsen, and I think there was 2 or 3 others went down on the 26th, and they saw 10 more. So that was really good that year to see that many. And then this guy only flies about the last 2 weeks of April for a couple weeks. And so typically most people aren't even out looking when they're out. And you've got to hit some nice weather, because if you get a dreary day like this was, you won't see them. So you need a sunny, pretty warm day, and then they'll be out. When you see them, I don't want to, they're about half the size of a cabbage white. And they tend to stay down low and flit around where a cabbage white might fly up higher. So once you see one and realize what it is, it's pretty easy to kind of tell that it's an Olympia marble if you see another one. So anyway, and the last known observations were 2014 and a couple other years out in the Loess Hills. Again, same habitat kind of thing. But this year we had 79 observations over a 2-week period. So we got several more days in, which helped to find more. And it stayed pretty warm over the 2 weeks they were out. And they flew from, let's see, the first one was sighted on April 12th and the last one on the 25th. So again, that 2-week period, and then they're gone. So one of the interesting things and they use rock cress as a host plant, which was found in a 1939 plant survey of the site, but we haven't found it since then. So we're not sure what else they might be using for a host plant, but hopefully they'll keep doing as well as they are, because right now they're doing really well. This is a few more little things that we find there. You've got a leafhopper. I think the second one's a spider. The third one, this is a similar species to the one I said that was undescribed. It's another one of those little gelsidae. Then there's a Hemiptera. It's one of it's true bugs that suck plant juices out. And then there's a fly, and then this is a non-biting midge down here in the corner. So this is just some of the stuff I see when I'm night lighting. I mean, Angela Morehouse and she's from Illinois, but she's been coming over when I go night lighting with me. And there's been a couple nights where one night I know we had 300 species in one night. So it's amazing how effective night lighting can be for documenting insects. There's some that don't come into the lights, but the biggest share of them do. So makes it pretty easy. If they come into the lights, you can photograph them, collect them if you want to, need whatever. But it's a very effective way to document insects in a location. Yes. Well, I kind of think I started out with like a sheet, and then you put lights on it. Right now I'm using kind of it's an inside-outside tent. It looks like a tent, but it has the sides there's no outside on it. It's like you folded the tent into the center. It has a center seam and then 4 partitions out, and then you hang the light in the middle of it. So the light shines out, and then the people or the insects come into the different sides of the tent. Right now I'm using a mercury vapor on one of them, and then I have a second tent where I use a black light. So the different light frequencies attract different insects. So it works really well, set up the 2. And then, like I said, when Angela comes up, she sets 2 more up. So we have actually 4 light setups that we use. So that really helps to attract a lot of things in. Well, we just photograph. We don't typically catch anything and collect anymore. We just rely on the photographs. I mean, when I started, before we had the digital cameras, I collected a lot of stuff because that's the only way you collect it, and then you had to pin it and, go through, and then you got to store it and whatever. I've got something like 18,000 specimens in my collection. And once we got the digital cameras, it was a lot easier. You just take photographs. We've got a ID program now that we just run the photographs through. And then I use, again, Bug Guide and Moth Photographers Group to check the identifications. And then I can basically bulk load them into my website, the records. Yes. It's a white sheet or whatever you want to think of, a white material, and you just photograph them, use flash, and you can get really nice pictures of them. And we tend to try to photograph 2 or 3 sides if we can on some of the more difficult ones. But there's a lot of them that, as long as you get a top view, they're fairly easy to identify, but there are a few that are difficult, but we keep working on it. 12 inches. I use 100 millimeter macro lens. And again, they're on the sheet. You can get real close to them to photograph them. That's good and bad, because the nights when you get 10,000 caddis flies in and they're flying all over and getting in your eyes and whatever, but that's part of the game. So, okay.
We want to be sure to get that date on our Facebook page and on our website.
Oh, for the day, the public day for this year is June 13th.
No. At Kent Park.
Oh, Kent Park is, I think it's July 24th. It's a Friday night. They're having it on a Friday night.
I have been to several of these over the years, not recently, but several, and it's fascinating.
Yeah, I set up my lights, and then the naturalists have other things going on. They have a talk inside, and then you go around the trail, and they've got some different setups. But it's pretty fascinating. If you ever get a chance to go, it's fun to come out and hang around for a little bit and see what's coming in. Okay, let's see. Okay, here's some of the fun things that we have when we're out photographing insects and just trying to find out. I was trying to photograph the middle guy, which is that one beetle I was talking about before. And when checking the yarrow, I was seeing these other 2 guys, which look very similar until you get up close. So I was thinking, wow, here's a bunch of these beetles, and you get up close, and the one on the left is a sawfly, and there's actually 2 of them that are almost identical. And then this guy is one of the hemipteras, one of the true bugs. So that's some of the things you run into when you're out taking pictures and trying to identify these things. It's like the monarch and the viceroy. They're very similar, but they're different. Once you start learning them and get pictures of them and look close, you can see the obvious differences. But when they're 10 feet away on a flower and you go, oh, okay, there's one, you run over and you go, well, that's not the one I'm looking for. But luckily with the new digital cameras, you can take a lot of pictures, and they're easy to store, and you can crop them. And so it makes it a lot easier to collect the data now.
Do you have any guesses on why those 3 whole different orders of insects would evolve to that same pattern of black and red?
Well, we had a discussion at our last Audubon meeting about the hairy and the downy woodpecker. Instead of being divergent, they're convergent. You get similar species in the same habitat. They develop similar habits and colorations. So we think this might be something similar.
Thought about what it might be that would be useful for it to be what?
Well, and again, one of the things with insects, a lot of them are out at night. So there's a lot of the different patterns we think are, if you see them in ultraviolet, which we can't, but they think that on the ultraviolet rays, they look totally different to each other. That, that's a whole new study thing that you can do. So, but yeah, it's kind of interesting when you see 4 or 5 species that look very similar. And then the other thing you run into is the one on the left over here is very distinct, easy to identify. These other two, and unfortunately, I don't have any way to show the people at home, but for those of you here, if you look at this guy, very similar pattern and whatever. Well, this guy has little brown spots here. And that's how you tell it apart. And as it turns out, the Laudabilis, we've only documented at Big Sand Mound. So that's some of the things that, some of these things are so cryptic. Some of the ways of telling them apart, you got to really look close. So that makes it even more fun. A couple others that we've had really good luck with the last couple of years, and especially this year, is the juniper hair streak and the Henry's elfin. I didn't put down how many sightings we had, but over that 2-week period that we were looking for Olympia marbles, there was lots of these guys sighted at the same time. The juniper hair streak uses the juniper cedar trees as a host plant. The Henry's elfin typically uses, mine went blank. It's a pink blooming tree that in the spring. No, redbud tree. It uses the redbud tree, but we don't know of any redbuds on Big Sand Mound. And I looked up, and there's a half a dozen or more other plants they use, but we haven't found any of those either. So, but we found a really good population of them at Big Sand Mound. So again, that's part of the study. Okay, we know they're there. We know what they're supposed to be hosting on. So we got to keep looking till we find something they're actually hosting on. Yes.
When you talk about hosting, are you talking about the adult eating?
The caterpillars. The larvae and caterpillars use the plants they use when they're in the larva stage, caterpillar stage.
Okay, so when you see the adult, it might not be.
The adults are going to be out nectaring on anything that's flowering. In fact, the day we were there, a lot of these, or the day I was there anyway, were on fragrant sumac, which was one of the few things that was actually blooming as such. So they were nectaring on fragrant sumac. But when we talk about host plant, that's what the caterpillars, the larvae eat on to, for a food source. What's that?
That's what the adult is.
Yes.
So now you've got to find what the closest red bud is.
It's a mile away.
A mile away.
At least a mile away. So there's got to be something else there they're hosting on, and that just is too far for them to go that far. Could be something else in that family. Like I said, that's one of the things that we've got to figure out what they happen to be using there. We know it's something because it's just too far for them to go for a mile for a host plant. This is another one. It's a green lacewing, and this is what the larva looks like. I just kind of stuck this in here because I thought it was fascinating the first time I saw one of these. This would make a good creature for a scientific or science fiction film. You blow these guys up and they look pretty nasty. Just think if that was six feet instead of a half inch. but just it's interesting when you start seeing some of the larvae for some of these other, not butterflies and that, they're caterpillars, but some of these other plants, um, like the lacewing and ant lions, they have a larva that's in the ground that looks kind of similar to this. But I don't know if you've ever seen ant lions. If you look in the sand, there'll be little craters, and the larvae is at the bottom of the crater waiting for ants or whatever to fall in, and then they pop out and grab them, and that's how they capture stuff. So insects are fascinating creatures. Okay, this is just a little data on the plants. In 1939, Robert and Mabel Brown did a survey, and they found 301 species on the mounds of Muscatine, was the way it was titled. Since then, in 2015 and newer, we found 126 of those species. There was a survey done in 1976, right before they created the Big Sand Mound Preserve. They found 64 species of that original 301. So there's 100 species that we haven't redocumented on the site. So we're still looking. Now, in the 1976 survey, they documented 427 species. We found 230 with new observations, or 230 of those with new observations, and 157 that they found we haven't redocumented. So still lots of work to do to see what all the plant community is there. We've documented 329 species since 2015 when we started doing our documentation. And there's been a total of 662 documented on site. We think some of the ones they did in the 1939 survey may have been a few misidentifieds with what we know now, because we know, well, the hoary and the hairy puccoon, hoary is normally only found like Iowa City and north, and the hairy is found further south. Although I guess there's some places where they overlap, but typically not that far south in the state. So there may have been some misidentifications. I mean, it was 1939. I mean, that's a lot of years ago, if you think about it. We think we've learned a lot more, but sometimes I wonder when we get how much new stuff we find and how much we go, wow, we got to do some more study first, get some of that data sorted out. Anyway, a little bit about it. The site is divided up into two main sites by county, and then it's divided up into 11 sub-sites based upon their burn units. And they have a burn plan. They burn every, I don't know, each one every 4 or 5 years. It's not every year. And a lot of times they do spot burning. But they're also doing a lot of tree cutting and brushing to get rid of like autumn olive and some of that kind of stuff. The invasive species stuff, honey locusts, cedar trees. They're doing a lot to get rid of that and clear that off of the big main part of the prairie. So, this, oops, don't jump ahead. Come on back there. Okay, this is some pictures Don sent me. These are students from West University in West Virginia that were out last year for the summer doing herp studies. As you can see, kids will be kids even at 20 years old out. The bottom left down there, you can see a couple of the boys were out in the middle of a pond catching turtles. And then if you can see all of them here with snakes. Up in the upper right corner here, they were had taken turtles in. They weigh them. If they're unmarked, they have a way to mark them, the shell, so they can redo them. They also I don't know the numbers, but they have several of the turtles. They have transmitters on so they can find them again. Plus, some of them, they have temperature sensors on. And they've come up now where they've got some stations, they call them, where they can measure the temperature in the soil every 5 inches down to 50 inches. So they can compare the soil temperature to the turtle temperature, and they can tell how far down in the ground the turtles are burying themselves over the winter. And you can see in the fall where they start out at the ground, and as the temperature drops, you can see them burrowing further and further down into the ground. So it's some cool technology. And he's even got it so he can transmit some of the data back to his house. So he doesn't have to go out every day to see if the turtles are up. He can go, okay, Leo, Fred, whatever, they've got some of them named, is he's starting to get to the close to the surface because he can tell the temperature of the turtle versus the temperature of the soil. And they're even getting so fine now that some of the snakes are overnighting in the grass thatch. So now they're wanting to do the air temperature, the temperature at the thatch, and then the temperature in the soil 6 or 8 inches down, so they can tell if the snakes are staying on the surface at night versus going back down in their holes. So it's, technology's great if you use it for the right things. This shows some of the things. There's an ornate box turtle. They get eastern and western hognose snakes. I think the one down there, the second picture, is a racer of some kind. I think this is Paige, and she's got a little baby possum she's holding. And then there's a big snapping turtle in the bottom right picture. So it's just, I'm talking about 3,000 species of insects and plants, and that doesn't include very many of the snakes and the jumping mice and whatever they're catching.
What's the second picture on the left?
I think that's least weasel. I think that's what it is. I'm not for sure, but they have some weasels there. They catch in their bucket traps. They run along the fence lines and fall down in the traps. So they get mice and all kinds of cool stuff along with their turtles and snakes. In this, you can see they're doing some burning, plus they're, I can't really tell. Oh, I guess these are just some burning. This is a picture of all the students that were there last year. They go out in the wintertime and do some cutting and put them in big brush piles. At some point, they hope to burn the brush piles, but that just depends on, they got to get permits and get the weather right and all that to do that. But they're trying to get rid of all the honey locusts, the cedars, any of that kind of stuff that's invasive. So they're doing some pretty significant work on that part. Had a picture I wanted to show you, and I can't get the thing to work. I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to work. So anyway, this is the field days we're having this year. The field days are not public days. We invite people like Chris Edwards and Mark Brown and those guys down that are experts in birds and butterflies and that. They come down, spend the day, document whatever they're finding, and then they submit the data to me, and then that goes into the database that the Big Sand Mound Advisory Board can see. So we're having pretty much one a month through the year, and then we have night sessions at least once a month where we go out and put up the lights and see what we can get. So we're collecting a lot of good information, and I always like to see Mark Brown and some of the guys show up. It's amazing the stuff they find, little beetles and just whatever. And Mark, I know, is probably one of the better photographers I know, that some of the pictures he sends me of some of these little teeny beetles and stuff are just fascinating. So I applaud all those guys that are supplying data to me. And this, this is kind of an outline. You can see the yellow breakdown of the different burn units in the prairie. I think there's like 11, 12, something like that, that get cycled through. This is just a few pictures that Don sent me of different areas. This is kind of down at the south end in the big dune. These are the big dunes. There's a couple ponds that are between the dunes and the river. Last year was especially good because of the rain we got. A lot of the plants were twice as full as they normally would get. Big blue stem was really tall last year, and all the plants and the blooms and everything were just really good. This is, you come in, there's a roundabout, and you walk across this flat area, and then you go up a hill there, and then you kind of get up on a higher level. So it's kind of 2 levels right as you come in from the north side of the reserve. Okay. Anybody got any more questions? Okay.
You'll have to unmute yourself, Zoomers, if you want to ask questions.
You'll have to repeat the questions. But you listed the Odanega and only dragonflies. It also includes damselflies.
Yes. The Odonata Odonata includes both damselflies and dragonflies.
So you found 40 dragonflies and no damselflies?
No, it's split. It's about half and half.
Okay, so it was 40 dragonflies and damselflies.
Yes.
Okay.
I should change that so it's
That's only for purists.
okay.
Jim, could you repeat the questions?
I was just going to ask Jim to, if people at in person repeat so the Zoomers can hear the questions.
Okay, the question was, I showed for the Odonata that there was only 40 species. That covers both dragonflies and damselflies. I didn't put damselflies on there, but it covers both of them. I think they're split about half-half, if I remember right. Any other questions?
I got another one.
Okay.
What time do you start your nightlife?
It,
When you go out to nightlife?
When I go out to nightlight, that's the question. What time do I start? It's usually I set up or try to be set up at sunset. And then, and as you know, that changes over the summer. And then it usually takes about 30, 45 minutes for things to start coming in real heavily. I mean, usually it gets things right away. As soon as I get the lights turned on, some of the leaf hoppers and that usually show up, caddisflies right away. But it usually takes about 30, 45 minutes for the moths and beetles to really start coming in. And then it can go to you get ready to go home. I'm usually done about 11:30 at night. I've had my couple hours or so in. When I was younger, I used to stay longer, but about 11:30, I'm ready to go home, go to bed. So, yes.
Explain about the public tours and why they're so infrequent.
Okay, the question is talk about the public tours that Big Sand Mound puts on. They're currently only happen every 3 years. And during COVID, they actually skipped over one because of COVID. but they typically have them every 3 years. They're open to the public. There's a lot of different walks that you can go on from leaving the Bear Center building. It's about a 5-minute walk out till you get to the preserve, and then it's just you walk around in the preserve. That's probably the easiest one. You can look at plants, insects, whatever. And that's at the north end of the preserve. If you want to go see the big mounds, they're clear at the south end of the preserve. So that probably takes you a good 30-minute or longer brisk walking to get down to there. Luckily, when I'm out there doing my thing, I can drive down there, but they don't allow driving. But they are going to provide vehicles this year if somebody needs some help walking, or they get down there and need a ride back. There will be water stations at various places. They're trying to make it as good as they can for the public, but you have to be aware that some of the trips, you start at the north, and some of the stuff, it's clear at the other end down on, at the other end of the 510 acres. So it's.
Sure, you remind people they have to RSVP, have to reserve.
Oh, one thing they're trying to do this year is they want people to pick the different walks or tours, whatever you want to call it, ahead of time, so they know how many people are going to be in each one of them. So we're having 2 insect walks in the morning. So if you want to go on those are just, you walk out to where we get into the preserve, and we'll walk around. We'll see what we can find. Peek into the buckets where they collect the turtles and stuff. But they want people to pick the tours they want to go on, and you'll see each one of them has a difficulty rating. And so they want people to be aware that the insect walks are probably a 1, but the walks down to the big dunes are probably a 5. Oh, 4. Okay, 4.
There's a 1 to 4.
Okay.
And the 1 is an indoor sit-down talk.
Oh, that's actually got the indoor one. Okay.
2 and 3, 4.
Okay. So I guess the yes. So I guess the insect walks are 2s, because that's probably the easiest one you can get on if you don't go to the one indoors.
What made the big sound? Are they, in the west, they're eolian, are these just from the river? Are they water-based and move sand in the mountains? Or is it a wind, or what is it?
I think it's the question was, how did the dunes form? And I'm guessing it was a combination of both the wind and the sand being moved around by the Mississippi River, especially during flood times and that. They'll build up the sandbars, and then the river changes a little bit and goes around them. And next time you get a flood, they get a little bigger, and you get, sand blowing in and packing up next to the river. So, I think it's probably a combination of that. Similar, like you said, the Luss Hills, where it was pretty much wind blown kind of stuff, where it just piles up. The one thing that's always interesting when you talk about sand dunes, people go, well, it's kind of cool that the vegetation is starting to grow in and stabilize the dunes. But really, you want the wind to disturb the dunes. And even people out there wandering around on the dunes is good for them, because they need the disturbance to keep them to be dunes. Otherwise, they're just grown over woods that are sandy kind of thing.
Why did they do it every year? It seems a long time.
The question was, why did they only do the public days every 3 years? I'm guessing a combination of things. From the old days when they started doing it, they thought they would kind of restrict the public coming into the property. And I think some of it's just the fact of the planning it takes to do it. You know, you're maybe have 400 or 500 people show up. So there's a lot of planning to do, setting up for foods, you know, speakers, the walkers, and just not wanting to have 500 people out there every year is probably another thing. You know, you need some disturbance, but you don't want to look like a herd of cattle have been through there in the last 50 days. Yes, Karen.
When I went before, it was very difficult to walk in some of the sand. And I know the ticks will be a real bad feature this year. So what kind of footwear are you recommending?
Karen asked what kind of footwear and that I recommend. I would definitely want to wear good hiking shoes, comfortable hiking shoes. I would wear, if you have a pair of rubber boots that you can walk in reasonably well, those work well to keep the ticks off. And definitely spray yourself good for ticks, because there are a lot of ticks at Big Sand Mound. I think there's a lot of ticks everywhere, but
Yeah.
they definitely are a lot at Big Sand Mound. Where, you know, it's a typical, if it's a hot day, you need to have a hat on, maybe long sleeve shirts, or, you know, sunshade, whatever. You don't want to get out there and get sunburned and whatever. Take plenty of water with you when you're going for your walk. They'll have water. There'll be porta potties around. So they do a pretty good job of trying to make sure there's no incidents with the public. And I don't think there's any poisonous snakes on the property. So if you get bit by a snake, you're probably okay. And again, there's all kinds of different programs that you can go on. I mean, there's even a 5:30 bird walk, I think there is. So if you want to get there real early and go for a bird walk, you can do that too. But, you know, I think most of the walks start, I think, around 9 o'clock. So
I think it's 8 to 4.
yeah, I think 8 sign up, and then, you know, the walks start at 9, and then, but, you know, around noon there's lunch, and then there's stuff in the afternoon also. So it's a full day of activities.
They include a field guide.
Yes. Karen mentioned that they also include, as part of your registration, you'll get a field guide.
That's fantastic.
It is good. So, yes.
You've described a number of terrain differences, and I wonder what your strategy is as you try to do your research, where to look within the different locations. Is that systematically done, or do you only have one place that you go to there?
The question was, as part of our research, where do we plan our activities? And we actually go from the north part by the Bayer Center, which is the northernmost part. We go clear to the south end of the preserve. So, and we've night lighted at both ends, and kind of not quite the middle, but along the way. And then when the people are out there doing their studies, we cover the whole preserve. So we're getting, you know, I'll call it the low area of prairie as you come in, clear down to the big dunes. So there's a couple of lakes in that people wander around those and that. So we pretty much cover the whole preserve with the research we're doing. And it's, like I said, it's just kind of fascinating, the stuff you find. So, any other questions?
Okay, I'm going to stop recording then.
Okay. Are we done with our hour? Yeah, we are.